Did you know you shouldn't live in London?
Yes.
Yes. I
learned this by going to London a lot.
Yes, there's a message that sort of like comes into you when you go there. It's like, I really don't want to live here. But as if there wasn't enough evidence just from your own eyes whenever you go there or see it in footage if you don't live in England, the Met Police have once again shown themselves to be terrible at their jobs, and this should be an interesting subject to discuss with you, because some of the places that this is going to go, because you've examined a lot of the race report stuff that came out, Tony Sewell's race report that came out last year, as far as I remember.
It was actually primarily Carl that went through that.
Oh, was it Carl? Well, you'll probably have some tangential knowledge there. And just as a reminder as well, everything that we're about to discuss went on during Cressida Dick's run as Chief of Police, and just I don't think we addressed it, or if we did, we only brushed over it. Last month, Cressida decided to resign because people weren't big fans of Cressida, as far as I'm aware. People didn't really like her very much, or the way that she was running the police. And I can kind of see why, because this story is about the Met Police apologising for strip searching a Hackney schoolgirl. And we'll get into why now. So, a black schoolgirl was strip searched by police after being wrongly suspected of carrying cannabis. Now, I really hate to do this, but remember that she is black, because this will become this will become the main focal point around reporting of this issue.
It couldn't have been what was the evidence, what was the reasonable suspicion. No, it has to be.
Because of course it is. And just to say that, before I criticise the reporting and the investigation practices that were undertaken throughout this, what happened to this girl, no matter what her race is not acceptable and is not good, as I'm sure you will agree with me on as we go on through this. The traumatic search by Metropolitan Police officers took place without another adult present at the girls' secondary school in Hackney in 2020. A safeguarding report on the incidents concluded that it was unjustified, obviously, and racism was likely to have been a factor. Notice how they qualify in this article with likely, because as we'll go through, we'll find that there isn't really any evidence of this other than my feelies, though. But Scotland Yard has said the officers' actions were regrettable and should never have happened. According to the report, the impact of the pupil, referred to here as Child Q, was profound and the repercussions obvious and ongoing. They're being referred to as Child Q to keep their identity a secret, and as a result of that, you also can't find out which school it was in Hackney this happened at, which once again must be obviously to protect her identity. Family members described her as changing from a happy-go-lucky girl to a timid recluse that hardly speaks, who now self-harms and needs therapy. So the reason for all of this is that police were called to a school in Hackney at the end of 2020 by teachers who told investigators that they had been concerned the teachers had drugs in her possession because she smelt of cannabis. She was taken to the medical room and strip searched by two female officers while teachers remained outside. During the ordeal, her intimate body parts were exposed and she was made to take off her sanitary towel. No drugs were found. So, whether or not they had reasonable inference to assume that she would have drugs on her or even clean stoned, I don't think you can justify this.
The teachers say, we think she smells of cannabis. We don't even have any confirmation that the police could even agree with that statement. And then they decide to go for a strip search.
Yeah, not looking good.
No, that's not reasonable suspicion in my view.
Really not looking good. The local child safeguarding practice review published in March was conducted by the City and Hackney Safeguarding Children Partnership. It said that there was highly likely that adultification bias was a factor. And I've started to notice already that new articles are starting to be published about this already. This is a term I have never heard of before, something that I've never heard of before until this, and all of a sudden articles are starting to pop up, because of course they are, where this adultification bias is where adults perceive black children as being older than they are because they see them as more streetwise, which sounds like a claim that is unfalsifiable and unprovable, because it's just a feeling that people may have. I know.
It's kind of useless.
Supposedly, there have been studies done into this, but I would need to look into them to really determine whether they're valid or not based on methodology. But continuing in a written statement to the review, the girl said that she wanted everyone who allowed the strip search to happen to be held responsible. Perfectly reasonable, yep. She said, I need to know that the people who've done this to me can't do it to anyone else ever again. In fact, so no one else can do this to any other child in their care. Investigators found that the school staff deferred to the police's authority and should have been more challenging. This has been accepted by the school, with one staff member saying, "I have never known, nor would I condone, a strip search of a young person on a school site." Well, sad to break it to you that one happened, so it's kind of just meaningless words. Detective Superintendent Dan Rutland, one of the Met's Central East Command, said, "We recognise that the findings of the safeguarding review reflect this incident should never have happened. It is truly regrettable, and on behalf of the Met Police, I'd like to apologise to the child concerned, her family, and the wider community." Well, that doesn't stop it from having happened in the first place, so that's kind of meaningless again. Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said this was a deeply disturbing case that no child should face and that he would be closely following the IOPC review. Hackney's Council's mayor and deputy mayor have condemned the humiliating, traumatising and utterly shocking treatment by police officers, and they have asked for a report in 6 to 9 months on progress made regarding the review's 8 findings and 14 recommendations. So we'll see how this leads going in the future, but I thought it would be good to take a look through the report that was done so that we can determine what they were looking at here, and also look at what it was that they were doing to determine whether there was any racism involved in this. So just for some background to explain why it was that they ended up calling the police, felt the need to call the police in the first place. So teachers told the review that on the day of the search, they believed that child Q was smelling strongly of cannabis and suspected that she might be carrying drugs. On questioning child Q, she denied using or having any drugs in her possession. A search of her bag, blazer, scarf, and shoes revealed nothing of significance. So they say, "You smell of weed, let's take a look through your stuff." They look through her stuff and don't find anything. As far as I'm concerned, that's where this should have ended.
Who cares?
It's done. So, but remaining concerned, teachers sought advice from the Safer Schools police officer. Due to restrictions from COVID-19, the officer was not on site. He recommended that the school call 101 and ask for a female officer to attend. A male and female officer subsequently arrived at the school, followed by another 2 officers, one of whom was also female. After discussions between the police and teachers, child Q was escorted to the medical room and she was subsequently strip searched. You'll notice there no reference to contacting the parents to get consent on this.
But also, there's no. I haven't heard again anything from the officers saying, "No, we agree with your assessment that she smells of cannabis, and therefore we think." There's no argument at all. Like, it's so far,
and
it seems that we just have these teachers' word. I don't even know if that's believable.
Yeah, there is a little bit more background to this, but I still don't think that it justifies this in the slightest. So the report continues, no appropriate adult was in attendance, teachers remained outside the room, and child Q's mother was not contacted in advance. No drugs were found during either the strip search or a search of the room in which child Q had been waiting beforehand. So they didn't find anything, she didn't hide anything, they didn't find anything on her. Even if she smelt of weed, she didn't have anything on her.
There are multiple ways you can smell of weed, and you don't have to have weed on you.
Yes, I feel like in an inner city London school, there are many multiple ways of smelling like weed that do not include having smoked it yourself.
Or having it on you.
Or having it on you. You could have just walked past someone, or even just been on the bus, I would imagine. So yeah, this is a complete abuse of power and a waste of resources as far as I'm concerned. It does also talk about the procedure of strip searches. Apparently there are various levels of it. I don't think they went to the full cavity or whatever the most extreme one is, but they did, you know, as the BBC article said, make her take out her sanitary towel, which says it all. Consultation with a supervisor is always required prior to such a search. During a search involving the exposure of intimate body parts of the body, persons are required to remove some or potentially all of their clothing. They can also be required to bend over and spread their legs. The police are allowed to require compliance in this regard if the person is suspected of concealing evidence. And I really despise that the police apparently have the authority to force this on you without any shred of evidence whatsoever other than, your teacher smelt it on you. And we don't need to ask your parents. They didn't have the appropriate adult in the room. This is vile behavior.
There has to be a suspicion of evidence. And so far there's been nothing. There's just a teacher said, I think maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's a bit more of the context for why they might have had some more suspicions. A month before child Q was strip searched, she was similarly identified by the school as smelling of cannabis. On this occasion, child Q was described by school staff as being intoxicated, although on contacting her mother, she explained that child Q had been studying late the night before and that it was accounted for her presentation. And she'd also known a person who'd been excluded in the school for possessing drugs on them at the time. But once again, all of this is kind of he said, she said. There is no concrete evidence other than you smell and you look a bit
know
wasted.
someone who used to have drugs on them, okay?
Yes. Well, we'll call the police. Get your clothes off. I don't see the connection here. It's awful. And then we get on to the racism stuff, because of course we do. To ensure the review had access to relevant expertise, a reference panel including Black and global majority ethnic safeguarding professionals was also convened. Their input has been invaluable in helping to explore and validate the review's findings in the context of anti-racist practice. So it's not even just that we want to check that there is racism here, we want to make sure that you have been actively anti-racist in the way that you have approached this. So we've got a bunch of race ideologues to come in and determine that. And what do you expect their results were? It was racism.
Right.
Because, of course, if you get people in whose jobs exist purely because of racism, do not expect them to solve racism or determine, no, there wasn't actually any racism there. Their jobs depend on racism being the boogeyman around every corner. Just to confirm as well, the conduct of the officers is still in review who did this, so I guess we'll find out what happens to them in the future. But the report then takes a sizable chunk to just talk about how this was awful and racist, and gives, almost like the teachers and police in determining to strip search this poor girl in the first place, gives no real evidence in why it's racist. So, finding 8, having considered the context of the incident, the views of those engaged in the review, and the impact felt by Child Q and her family, racism, whether deliberate or not, was likely to have been an influencing factor in the decision to undertake a strip search. So, because we feel it's racism, it's racism.
So this is just an individual saying, you probably would do this to a black girl because she's black.
They actually explicitly state that here. So, let me see. Yeah. Furthermore, Child Q and her family strongly believe that the strip search of Child Q was a racist incident. While acknowledging the ongoing debate concerning definitions, the review and reference group were clear that the perception of the victim is central to how racism is defined. Indeed, the review and reference panel held a firm view that had Child Q not been black, then her experiences are unlikely to have been the same. So if we compare what did happen to an imaginary scenario where the girl is white, in my imaginary concocted scenario, it didn't happen the same way. This is not evidence.
No, but also the idea that the British police would not do this to a white girl. Of course they would.
Of course they would.
British police are terrible. I mean,
they really
they're
are.
the people behind the grooming gang scandals all over the country. I'm sorry, but they really, really are troublesome in this regard. So, yeah, no, I can totally believe they would do this to white kids. I believe they would do it to anyone.
Yeah, because we do not trust the police's conduct in these situations. And the situation, on the face of it, without bringing race into it, is terrible enough as it is and demonstrates how bad the police conduct is. But we have to make it about race. And guess who they bring up? Guess who they bring up in this? The importance of this line of inquiry is starkly reflected in several events that took place around the same time.
Oh, kill me.
Significantly, 6 months prior, George Floyd was tragically killed in the USA, and there were repercussions around the globe, including in the UK. It brought into sharp focus some of the negative experiences that black and global majority ethnic communities can experience when interacting with the police.
George Floyd had a bunch of drugs on him, and that's led these police officers to treat a black child more adult and more likely to have drugs on them.
Thousands of miles away at the same time. Not the same police force, not the same police officers, not the same country, not even the same legal or justice system.
But George Floyd.
But George Floyd.
Remember the Floyd.
Remember Floyd. Floyd is love. Floyd is life. Floyd is racism embodied. But this is what the entirety of the discussion regarding this has now devolved into, as you would expect. You can't just hate this situation for happening on the face of it, for having happened in the first place. You need to make sure that people know that you are still allied to the cause by only caring about the fact that it happened to a black girl and not the fact that it just happened in the first place. The Independent has an article talking about Child Q's abuse, reminds us that black people are dehumanized every day. The basis for the school's initial allegation...
by white scum!
Yep. I know.
So I'm not listening to this crap where it's just like, yeah, did you know black people are dehumanized by those disgusting whiteys?
Yeah. They also expressed concern about cannabis possession because another student, known to the girl, was excluded for drug possession. This sounds like a joint enterprise sentence. When we say the school-to-prison pipeline is real, believe us. What does this have to do with the situation? It's awful enough. You don't need to bring all of your ideological BS into this. Sadly, these types of abuses are perpetrated against black girls and black women 365 days a year. In a society where we're neither believed nor protected by the laws of the land and its institutions. No, the problem is that you should be protected by the laws of the lands and its institutions. It's in this case that the girl wasn't. And I don't think you need to share a skin colour with her to recognise that this is a miscarriage of justice.
Sorry, I'm calling it on the racism thing. I want to put money on it almost.
Okay.
Which is that, remember, this is London, and it's the Metropolitan Police, and you recruit from where you are, and it's Hackney. I'm saying one of the coppers is going to be black as well.
Well, they've not released that information yet. I would have looked.
It's going to be another Andy No moment.
I would have been able to say, but I don't think they've released that information.
But
I would not be surprised, but I'm not going to throw it out just yet until we know. More than 650 police officers are working in British schools, with many assigned to sites in areas of high deprivation amid concerns of the disproportionate targeting of black children. So there you go. And sadly, I hate to bring this up. I hate to defend the police in this situation, but generally speaking, the police go where the police are called to the most often. Whether those calls initially are justified or not.
They don't look at a racial map and then go, let's go there.
No, they don't do that, shockingly enough. What they do is they go, these are areas of high crime. We should be there more often. It's nothing to do with race. Race is tangential in this. But, thankfully, we've got people like Diane Abbott chiming in, because Diane Abbott will be able to solve the disparities of the British policing and also fix any other issues that policing may have. Indignities that Child Q is subjected to are not an aberration. They're part of a bigger picture of institutional racism and discrimination within policing. Scroll down, she's written this letter.
If I was the family of Child Q, like, I know Diane Abbott is your MP in Hackney, you don't really get a choice, but like, could you get a better representative?
I know.
She's going to butcher it.
In light of these developments, I'm requesting an urgent meeting with yourself and with your leadership team to discuss how vital improvements can be made, because a meeting with Diane Abbott is going to solve the problem. Diane Abbott has all of the solutions to all of the problems. If we just had Chairman Abbott in charge, we would be able to solve all the world's problems.
Look, she is literally the international embarrassment in British politics. Like, she turned up on the election day with two shoes on, both right foot shoes.
Sounds rightist to me.
There were different shoes from different pairs as well. She went on, an interview on LBC and got mixed up between the numbers 100 and million multiple times. Like, this is a 50 IQ absolute moron.
She said that Mao did more good than harm.
What
metric she was measuring that on, I've no idea.
I would really not want her anywhere near my case if I were the family, but okay.
I wouldn't.
know you don't really get a choice because she's the MP, but...
No. Jeremy Corbyn also had something to say about it.
Yeah,
because of course he did, talking about it was institutional racism. So it's all the usual suspects, as always. And then here's some more discussion going on about it from this man, Joe Morgan. Don't know, sounds American. I have...
No, I believe he's British.
Oh, okay. Is he? Okay. Well, you sound too American for my liking. I have a question for the parents of white school-aged daughters. Can you imagine your daughter being strip-searched at school while she was on her period?
Yes.
Can you imagine police asking to do it? Can you imagine teachers permitting it? You see,
yes.
I can't imagine it. And if you want to know what white privilege is, it's that. I know.
Go to hell. Go to hell. Like,
I know.
You know, there is no way this bastard does not know the grooming gang scandal and the fact that it was white girls. And there's the horrible case in Manchester, which Maggie Oliver talks about, in which the girl had a fucking fetus of where she'd been raped, and they produced a fetus, and then the police took the fetus with the DNA evidence that she was raped, and they lost it. They just lost it, and then just didn't pursue the case. So we're like, we had a fetus, but then
it doesn't matter.
Down the back of the sofa, disappeared. White privilege. Go. Sorry.
It doesn't matter to this man because of the skin colour of the people that you are talking about, because these anti-racists, as has been pointed out innumerable times, are simply neo-racists. They have just found a way to be racist against the right kind of people.
Can you imagine the police being terrible to white girls? Yeah, I bloody well can.
Yeah, I really can. And that's the thing here, which is instead of taking this as an opportunity to have everyone come together to condemn this on the same lines that the police behaviour in England on a whole can be pretty bloody awful, some people have decided to take it as another opportunity to try and divide people by racial lines, because this has only got a positive, this has only ever had a positive effect in history, hasn't it? So at the end of the day, all I can really say is ignore these fools and don't live in London.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the book club series we do, this one on Lawrence Wright's The Looming Tower, Al-Qaeda's Road to 9/11 that me and Bo did together. If you want to follow what else I'm putting out, you can follow me at Getter at @Callum on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.